Hello, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Barbara's Banter. Brian and I are delighted to have you today. And we thought today we would do something a little bit different. And that is, we didn't have a guest. We are just going to talk to each other. So, Brian and I will be bantering on each other. And we thought we would take on some of the news of the day. And there is so much to talk about. And I'm going to run down some subjects, but we probably will not get to them all. So, we've got the pandemic. We've got another African American male that was killed by the police this week. We've got the president's infrastructure legislation. We've got voting rights legislation. We've got the president announced this week pulling out of Afghanistan. And question that I have, that all of us have, is bipartisanship really possible in Washington? We've got new sanctions on Russia, and of course, mass shootings and gun control. And last night we had another horrific incident in Indianapolis. So there's so much to talk about, and these are certainly our opinions, and we're just going to get the conversation started. So, Brian, are you ready?
I'm always ready with you, Barbara. And you said it's a conversation between. We've been talking like this for 20 years, so this is actually now we're just actually recording it now. This is the first time we've recorded it, but clearly there's not enough going on in the world right now.
Oh my goodness, you can't keep up.
It's really unbelievable, and there are exciting things going on, and there's very scary things going on.
Yeah, it is.
So let's have at it here for a little bit. I'm excited to talk to you.
Let's talk about the pandemic first, kind of where we are, and certainly we're making a lot of progress on vaccinations, and that's really a good thing. But I do worry about states lifting some of their restrictions, and we're going back too early. People think that it's all over, and it really is not. So, what are you thinking about that?
Well, there are a few things that, first off, let me say I'm very encouraged by where things are headed. But there are things that obviously worry me, and there are a few of those things. First off, you're right. It was kind of like when we went through, the presidential election, and when we hit a certain time, oh, well, now it's over, right? The pandemic's over now because, Trump's out of office, and it has nothing to do with politics, right? The pandemic doesn't know politics necessarily. Unfortunately, there's a lot of politics involved with the pandemic, but the actual science of the pandemic doesn't discriminate against who's president. So I feel like right now that because people are vaccinated and there are certain bans that are being lifted, I do feel that I just worry that people are getting complacent because it's not over. I still think that we need to be careful. I think that we can start to certainly live life maybe a little bit more than we have over the past year. But I do believe that we kind of have to still be careful and vigilant. And I do worry that we sometimes take that for granted. And whether it's the public or, government entities, this can come back next week if we're not careful.
Oh, and all the variants.
The variants too, right.
Perhaps a big problem. And in fact, I think I heard yesterday that there is, I think the CEO of Pfizer said something like there probably will be a need for another shot, a third shot as a booster, because that would help protect against the variants. But I take a flu shot every year. Many people do. And so I fully expect that that we will have to do this on an annual basis. And you know what? That's okay.
It is okay. And to the point too about being just vigilant and careful. I mean, I don't know if this has happened to you. I've gotten the flu shot before and then gotten the flu. So again, let's not start throwing parties just yet.
I completely agree.
And I understand. And it's human nature. We all want to get back out there. We all want to get back to whatever our own normal looks like. I get that and I understand it. But we still have to be careful. And Barbara, I don't know about your thoughts, but whether it's politics or science or economics, there's something out there called common sense. And, some people have and some people don't. It also depends on what what one's definition of common sense is.
Right.
But, I still think that, wearing the mask is appropriate when you're out there. I still think that being careful, even if you have the vaccine, just be careful, be smart. Go out and maybe do some of the things that you want to do, but maybe a stadium 100% full of people might not be the best idea. I mean, if people want to do that, I try not to judge that, but it might not be the best idea. That's all I'm
Oh,
saying.
absolutely. We still, but everybody's not vaccinated. So you've got to realize that. And we're still not quite sure whether, even if you're vaccinated, whether you could pick up something and carry it on to other people. And so we need to be vigilant, and we need to care about other people, not just ourselves. I watched, there was a congressional hearing yesterday, and Congressman Jordan, who is a little bit always on the wild side and boisterous and way over the top, was berating Dr. Fauci, because Dr. Fauci could not give an absolute date when we would be back to normal. And you sat there and you watched that and you said, my goodness, there's so many variables. And he's not going to be able to do that, because human behavior, we're not acting like we ought to act totally around the country, and taking this thing still seriously. And we all want to, I went out this week, I met a friend, and we went to dinner, and both of us had been vaccinated. And this was the first time I'd been in a restaurant in over a year. So it was a little weird, but I was so pleased that the restaurant had partitions up, and all the silverware and the glasses and the plates were all sanitized and in plastic. You took the plastic, and this was a top-notch restaurant. This wasn't a fast food,
Right.
but you took the plastic off yourselves. The warm bread came to the table, and it was in a brown paper bag. You took it out of the bag yourself. It was really interesting, all the precautions that they took to make sure the customers felt really safe in the restaurant. So I was pleased to see that.
That is hardcore. And we talk about the new normal, and that might be the new normal for a while.
Sure.
And it probably should be. It's the other thing too is that, you talk about human nature, right? And, there are going to be millions of people who just decide not to get the vaccine. And, if you would ask me, should people get it? Of course, I'd say yes. I'm going to try, not judge people. Everyone has their own reason for not doing that. So whatever that reason is, okay, I'm not going to sit here and cast necessarily judgment on that. But again, you just have to be careful. It's tough. It's not to the point about Fauci and a definitive date and all. It's impossible, because everybody has different behaviors. People have different values. It's impossible to say that. And I've always kind of thought, like, if Fauci came out and said, hey, if we shut down everything for 6 months, no one goes out, and in 6 months to the day, this will all be gone.
You'd be gone.
You would still have people that wouldn't do that.
No, you're right.
You would still have people that would go out, and I'd be like, yeah, I'll sit in my house for the next 6 months if I have to, if I know 6 months from now that it's over for good. But you would have people that be like, no, I'm not doing that. So it's absolutely impossible.
I know. And we just have to continue to be careful and hope for the best, and hope that the best of people come out, and that people not only just think of themselves, but think of other people around them. And I think that's the best that we all can do. I'm still very cautious. I don't let anybody in my condo that's not in my immediate family, or one or two friends that have also been vaccinated that are in their own little bubble. But beyond that, you still got to be very, very careful. And of course, you've got children who can't get vaccinated yet.
Right.
As I have a granddaughter, and so you get very concerned about them as well, and whether they can transmit it. They pick something up in school or wherever and transmit it. So we are not out of the woods yet.
We're getting there, but let's still be vigilant. Let's still, and I do believe we will get there. We will get to a point now where, even now, where you'll be able to go out and do things. But again, I hope that people understand that if you are just vigilant and use common sense, we probably will be okay going forward. But until that time, we just need, again, let's not start going crazy. Let's not start throwing parties and all this. Let's still be careful. Common sense is huge. And I don't know, again, if everyone has it, but there are probably some people that know me that say I don't have common sense. So who knows? So go figure.
Oh, I would beg to differ, Brian.
I hope so. Well, speaking of common sense, Barbara, There are some serious things going on right now with, with obviously with the shootings. That's obviously there's this is all serious. That's all serious. There's nothing to laugh at with this. And I want to ask you this question because when we talk about some of these and another incident right in Minnesota, of course, just what Minnesota needs.
Right.
And I have a good buddy of mine who lives in the Twin Cities, and he actually works for a TV station out there. So he's right in the middle of all of this. And I feel it's awful that this happened to just happened right outside of the Twin Cities again. Now they're this double whammy.
While the trial is going on. Yeah.
While the trial is going on, right? Couldn't be worse timing. And I'm wondering, like in this kind of situation, this comes down to kind of like accountability and even leadership, right? Some of the things that we talk about on the show with our guests. I don't pretend, or I try not to, pretend what's in somebody's mind when something like this happens. There was obviously the situation in Minnesota where a police officer was. I thought, again, I don't know where her head was at, but the story is that she thought she was grabbing a taser, which certainly would. I think tasers can kill, but they're not obviously intended to kill someone. It's to secure them and whatever. And whether I'm not here to judge that situation. I saw some of the video. They obviously felt that was needed, but she allegedly grabbed the gun instead and shot this poor kid, and this is what happened. So I'm wondering where, I don't know if there was criminal intent, but whether there was criminal intent or not criminal intent, it happened again. And here we are. Starting from scratch all over again. Now the Chauvin piece, that one seems a little bit more that was, certainly, if you saw the video, it certainly seems like there was intent there. This one, I don't know what your thoughts are, but where does the race piece begin? I don't know anything about this woman, so I'm not going to sit here and say I don't know who she's married to. I don't know if she has kids or has adopted kids. I have no idea. But this happened again. And so where does the point of accountability and training and leadership start? And then the racial piece come in that, okay, if this was somebody that maybe didn't look like this kid did, would it have been a different outcome? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I hear the training piece a lot, and I'm beyond thinking this is about training. It's about what's right and wrong and the human element. And if you go back to one of the podcasts that we did in February on Black History Month, when Dr. Remick talked about some of the history of the racial strife, and back then years ago, and he referenced the UK and colonialism and the slave trade. He referenced that it wasn't as much about the skin color as it was about dominance and the class section and one group having to have power over another. And I think there obviously is a lot of truth to that. It is many in law enforcement don't see people of color as equals or as human beings. And that's why I said, I push the training piece. Yeah, training has to be there, but these people have had all the training in the world. It's not about training.
Exactly.
It is about how you interact with people and how you treat people and the empathy and just how you treat another human being. And I think many times these policemen don't see people of color as their equal or as a human being, and that they've got to be dominant over them. You look at the lieutenant in the military, and this it happened in December, but it was just revealed about a week ago in Virginia, just nearby Virginia for me, and he was in uniform, serving his country. And you look how he was treated. And I heard the police chief in that jurisdiction said something like, "Well, he just should have complied." And what he did was tried to drove a little bit to get into a well-lit area. And I know my husband has said we never had a son, but we had lots of nephews. And every Black parent, particularly parents of an African American, a male, but more so with females now too, have what's called the talk. And that's not a conversation that you have to have with your children. And the talk is that if you get stopped, you make no sudden movements, you put your hands on the steering wheel. And I had been with my husband when he was pulled over. Uh, and he would say to the cop, because they ask for your license and registration, and the registration is always in the glove compartment.
Right.
And my husband would say, I'm going to reach over now into the glove compartment to get my registration. Is that okay with you? Um, People not of color don't have to do that.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's how they see people of color. I'm, you and I've talked about some of the race issues and things that I've experienced over my life. Um, but males, there seems to be this thing with African American males, and I don't know whether it's um, that they feel threatened by African American males. I'm not sure what it is, but it's like it's open season right now. And you know what? It didn't just start to happen. It has been happening all along. It's just with all the cell phone cameras and all, it's now all being revealed. And so we've all, people of color have known all of these things for quite a while. But I just go back to, it's the human, how you feel about your fellow man, how you treat people. And and I don't know what the answer is. I really don't know. And of course, the last 4 or 5 years with the former president has made it okay for it to all come out in the open, and the just gave this hatred and this prejudices just free license to just roam out in the open. And it's disturbing. It is very scary, as you and I talked about. Um, and it's just, I mean, to see this young 20-year-old guy um, just shot. And I don't know how I was listening to CNN yesterday, I guess it was, and Chief Ramsey, who is a commentator on
Yes.
CNN,
I
but
saw
I
that.
know Chief Ramsey because he used to be the police chief here in Washington. Tough cop, really good. And he said, I don't know how you mix up a taser from your gun. First of all, the taser is yellow, has the yellow handle on it or whatever. And he said the weight of the two things are very different. So how do you mix that up? And she wasn't a rookie. In fact, she was training a rookie. She's 26-year police veteran. How that happens? I don't know. Again, I don't know. I can't judge the intent, and maybe it was an accident, or maybe, let me put it this way, maybe she certainly did not intend for that to happen. You don't, again, know what was in her head. Uh, but why feel the need to have to harm, whether by taser or by gun, to harm this young man? Because he had either expired, I've heard two things, expired tags, or there was an air freshener hanging from his mirror, and that's against the law to have one of those air fresheners hanging from your mirror.
Right.
Regardless, minor traffic stop, and young 20-year-old guy is dead. And you can go through this, the George Floyd thing. He's dead because supposedly he passed a $20 counterfeit bill.
Right.
Minor things, but yet young Black men are being killed.
So it almost what I'm saying, because again, it keeps happening,
Mm-hmm.
and it should hurt all of us every time it happens. I don't know if, because it happens so often, I don't know if people are becoming desensitized. I don't know if they are or not. Like, oh, it just happened. It's like the shootings, right? These mass shootings. You hear, you sort of expect to hear about it almost on a daily basis. So you feel bad about it, but you're so desensitized because you keep seeing it that it doesn't really, you don't cry anymore, right? You don't feel. I mean, maybe you do a little bit, but whatever.
Right.
It's one of those things. But this keeps happening. So so it seems like now we're at a point And where if you are if you're a person of color and you get pulled over, that if you're being treated in a way that is unacceptable,
Mhm.
it's almost that just take it. Don't mouth off. Maybe record it, and then take action afterwards. Otherwise, your life is in jeopardy. It seems like a lot of
Oh,
times,
and that's the advice that
that
my husband had given to my nephews, and
right.
that he did.
And-
My husband got stopped once. This may have been 6, 7 years ago, and we had driven down to Florida. I'm from Jacksonville, as you know, and we decided to drive over to St. Augustine, which was 30 minutes or so away
right.
from Jacksonville, because that's where both my parents were from. And my husband had a luxury car, and we were in St. Augustine. We had stopped at a light. There were two motorcycle cops behind us. You could see them coming up, and Gerald, my husband, said, "Bet you anything they're going to pull me over." And soon as the light changed, and we were turning the corner, their lights went on, and so he pulled over, and did his hands on the steering wheel. "What, officer, what can I do for you? What's wrong?" And they said, "You've got this tag on your car." And because I was at the Chamber of Commerce, the mayor had given, there's something here called low number tags.
Right.
And I had a low number tag for the District of Columbia. And the number was 17. So it was a very low number. And so my husband responded, yes. That was specially given out by the mayor of the District of Columbia. "Well, why are you here?" And he said, "We're just visiting. We had relatives here years ago. Why are you here? How can you afford this car?"
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the other cop was calling in the license plate, and then they came back to the car and said, "Well, it's a legitimate license plate." And find, in after a couple of other questions, we were on our way, and they went on their way. But that is the only reason the license plate tag, because they could have called it in before they pulled us
Of
over
course.
and made sure it was a valid license plate. In fact, he even had the nerve to say, "Did you make that license plate yourself?" Yeah, yeah.
6 or 7 years ago, not
Right.
not 50
No,
years ago.
no. This was 6 or 7 years ago.
Right.
And so that's the kind of thing. And the only reason we were pulled over is because we were African American in a luxury car.
That's the
And
that's the crime, the quote unquote crime, right?
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So I mean, I've seen it, and this happens. And had my husband reacted differently, there could have been a different outcome. But that's how it is, you know.
It's sad that it has to be that way. But again, if that's, I imagine when the talk that you are referring to, when and again, I know people of color who I know have told me that about that conversation with their children,
Mhm.
which I find so sad that that's not. I might have to have different conversations with my kids, but it's not,
You
certainly
don't have
not
to have
that.
that one.
It's
Right,
not that one,
right.
and I find that so sad and disheartening. But it really does come to the point where, again, you just kind of maybe take action afterwards, but at the time you just have to kind of take the verbal, whatever you want to call it,
Absolutely.
abuse or
Right,
whatnot, and then move on.
right, because they're in authority, and
Yeah.
and many of them, the authority and the power and the gun kind of goes to their heads. And so you just have to realize that, and to stay alive, to live another day. And that's the talk that African American parents have to have with their children, unfortunately.
So I want to ask you this question: as far as that situation, when we have a few minutes left, we're going to keep the show a little bit shorter today. You and I could talk all day about all these items, but I do want to ask you. If I recall correctly, and it was Brooklyn. Was it Brooklyn? Is that what it's called? Brooklyn City, I think, at Brooklyn, in Minnesota,
In Minnesota, yeah, yeah.
and the police chief resigned.
Hmm.
And this goes to the whole. We talk a lot about leadership on
Hmm.
this show. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are about the police chief resigning, where clearly, he has to be held accountable for what happened because he's the chief.
Hmm.
He may or may not have any control over what happened. I mean, let's also just say that we've said this before too. There are plenty of amazing law enforcement out there who do the job right, who, when they pull someone over who looks different than they do, are friendly and cordial and are in the communities on a daily basis, being great people and trying to bridge this gap, right? There are plenty of those. Unfortunately, those are the ones who don't really get a lot of the recognition. Those are not the ones who are recorded. You'll see those sometimes on, YouTube, a police officer who goes in the inner city, right? A white police officer who plays some games with some of the kids, informally, and that's great. And there are a lot of those as well. But I guess my question is that appropriate for that police chief to either have resigned on his own or be forced to resign based on what happened? I mean, accountability. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the buck always starts at the top.
Right.
But I think the thing that helped to contribute to his resignation, I watched his news conference with he and the mayor and the equivalent of the city administrator, who the city council fired, by the way,
Right.
that next day. It was a horrible news conference. And the police chief, first of all, he defended the cop and said it was just a mistake. She made a mistake. That was kind of one of the nails in his coffin right there, because all the information was not out. Everything had not been revealed, and he would have been wise to have said, we are going to investigate this and get to the bottom of whatever. But he immediately defended the cop. And then the press conference just went downhill. I mean, the media beat the hell out of him. and then he left. And the mayor was left standing there trying to respond. And the press was asking, well, why did the police chief, we've got lots of questions. Why did he leave? Is there something going on we all didn't know about? So the mayor had somebody go find the police chief and bring him back. So he, I don't know whether all of that contributed to, but he did not come across as a strong leader. He was no Chief Ramsey, as I would say, or the police chief in the other Minnesota, where the George Floyd incident happened, and that police chief was superb as well. And I saw him on the witness stand too during the trial. But this police chief did not come up to that level of leadership. He did not show strong leadership, and so maybe he just felt that eventually he would have been fired in a day or two anyway. And so let me get the heck out of here now. I assume it is just. He just was not, he did not exhibit the leadership that he needed to.
That's probably part of it. I mean, it's one thing. First off, he was obviously in hot water anyway, because this happened in his department.
Sure.
But I think that sometimes, and, we've talked about this with, and this is beyond crisis communications, obviously, but you do have to be up there. You do have to hold yourself accountable. You have to hold your department accountable. You have to hold the officer accountable. I understand that there's, as a police chief, your officers, your force has to know that you support them, but it can't be no matter what.
Right. Exactly.
Anymore.
Exactly.
We're past that point.
Exactly. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. And you got to say that. And I think, I think there will be some challenge. They have charged the police officer, obviously. But I think there will be some challenge around intent, because you don't know what was in her head. But we'll see. I mean, it's just tragic all the way around. It's just horrific.
I want to ask you along the same lines here as we start to wind down, but I do want to ask you a question, Barbara. Obviously when something like this happens, there are a lot of demonstrations afterwards, and sometimes riots, but it's not always riots. But there are certain people who they don't even know what happened. They're just there to riot. They don't care about the cause. They don't know the details of what happened. They're just there to cause mayhem. We know that. But there are people that actually care, that go there, that demonstrate appropriately. They're trying to raise awareness. They're trying to, create change. And obviously a big part of that is the Black Lives Matter movement. And I had an interesting conversation with a friend recently about Black Lives Matter, because this whole thing comes about, you see a lot of in my neighborhood here in Connecticut, it's a fairly liberal town that I live in. And there are a lot of Black Lives Matter
The sign.
signs and whatnot. And
Yeah.
that's, that's great. People supporting that. But here's my question, because you're always going to have that other side that says, well, that's great, Black Lives Matter, but all lives matter, right? And that kind of thing. And I know that is, I know that to me, it's all about context. I mean, if you just say, if you just say all lives matter as with just no meaning, obviously all lives do matter. But because of the context of society the way it is right now, all lives matter is really almost a contradiction of Black Lives Matter. So I guess I want to ask you that question. If for people out there that do say that all lives matter, is that should we be offended when somebody says that? Is that saying that is that a contradiction to Black Lives Matter, or in its natural form are we saying, well, Black Lives Matter and Asian lives matter and white lives matter and Hindu lives matter? What are your thoughts on that? Because I do think there's some gray areas, and I do think that there are some people, when they say all lives matter, they're basically saying, well, that's my that's what I'm saying, against Black Lives Matter, right?
Yeah.
But there are some people that are saying it, and they say, no, I really do believe that. I just don't believe in anybody being hated against. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when people do say that, most times, because I've had people say that to me,
Right.
and I had a long discussion with a couple a white couple that I thought were friends of ours, my husband and I, for years. And I had this discussion with them late last year, and they were pretty offended that the mayor in Washington had the Black Lives Matter plaza and the yellow writing downtown, and they were just offended. And the woman said to me, "Well, all lives matter. I don't know why this is so important." And I said, "But right now, Black lives matter less in so many people's hearts and their minds, and that's why you're calling attention to it. Certainly we all believe all lives matter, but it's being called upon because there are two justice systems right now.
Right.
One for white people and another for people of color. When can we have one justice system where everybody is treated the same way, very humanely? And I think that's what the Black Lives Matter campaign and the initiative comes about. Um, for those that, there are some that talk about defunding the police. I disagree with that. I think that and I think that the way that's framed is not what it was originally intended to be. It is kind of reappropriating resources for more around mental health and all of that, because police aren't usually trained in the whole mental health field, and a lot of the shootings and all have a mental health component to it. And so I think it's phrased incorrectly. But there are people that want to disband the police. No, absolutely not. We need them, but we need good policing. And so I think that the defund the police and Black Lives Matter have somehow, people have kind of put that together, and those that want to see it negatively will see it negatively, and that's where they go, well, all lives matter to me, all lives should matter to all of us. So
There's a lot of gray area there, and I don't understand how anyone could be offended by the Black Lives Matter. Offended, I mean, whether, again, if depending upon if you're a racist, maybe. I'm not saying everybody that doesn't agree with Black Lives Matter is a racist,
Right.
but I'm just saying, if you are a racist, I could see maybe
Right.
you'd be offended by it, right? Obviously.
Right.
But we're calling attention. I mean, all lives do technically matter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very organic. Again, if you just say that phrase with no external disruptors, we want to say that, I don't want anybody to go out today and get killed for driving their car. I don't want that to happen to anybody. But there might be a better chance of somebody, of a Black person being in a situation where their life would be in jeopardy if they're driving their car down the street today versus me.
Mm-hmm.
So whereas my life, hopefully people think my life matters as well.
Mm-hmm.
My life might not be as much at risk. And so
Absolutely.
what that movement is doing is it's simply calling out that kind of circumstance right
Mhm,
now. And
mhm,
so maybe at the end of the day, all lives do matter. But right now, with the way society is, it's
mhm.
important to be aware and informed about, mistreatment and, how life might be different than others.
You're right. In fact, the way you just said that is that if you're driving out, your life would not be as at risk as
Right.
an African American male, same height, um, same age group, same education, all of that. But the skin color is different from yours, and their lives would be more at risk than you. And you're
Right.
absolutely right. It was a nice way to put that.
And thanks. And so at that point, then, right, I hope that my life is as important, right, as
Mhm,
the African American who he had the same demographic as me driving down the street,
mhm.
but it's not. So let's be realistic here and
Right.
say that. And when I say that, that's not my opinion that it's not. To me, it is. Like their life is just as important as mine.
Mhm.
But from a societal standpoint, they are more at risk. And so I think
Right.
and I think that's kind of how maybe people don't look at it that way, but they should right now because this keeps happening.
Yeah.
I want to wrap it. There's one thing. This is going to be a full show because I think we're probably going to cover this when we do another just you and me here.
Right.
But I want to ask you. There's one thing that drives me nuts, and there are conspiracy theories that drive me absolutely crazy. And I know that you are a media. You are a media. You're obsessed with media. You're a guru. You're a
I'm a
buff, media
junkie.
buff. You're always on there watching media all day, which is great. But what drives me crazy is when people say, well, you know what, things aren't really as bad as we think they are. It's all media. It's the media it's what you see on CNN. It's what you see on social media. There are plenty of great things that are going out there, but the media only shows the bad things that are taking place. And I understand the certain perspectives of that because I am also a media person, right? I watch a lot of media. I analyze it. I've been involved with media for the majority of my
For
career.
years. Yeah.
Right. And so I understand that, the media companies, they want click rates on their websites. They want viewership. There is some sensationalism. So I'm not turning a blind eye to that.
Mhm.
But don't tell me that what happened to George Floyd didn't really happen. It was created by the media.
Right.
Don't tell me that the facts aren't what they are and that and there are some media that do manipulate the facts. Okay, let's just we know that. Okay, that's not the point that I'm trying to make. But let's not say there's a media machine necessarily. And there might be some in the media. I'm not saying that's not all. But ultimately, that this is all created by the media. It is happening out there. And it's not all generated by the media. So what are your what just based on what, and I know you're a big CNN, but I know you watch others too. You watch
Oh
to get
yeah.
different points
I
of view.
I I watch. I do watch others as well.
So what are
I
your
watch.
thoughts on people who say that? Because that drives me nuts. And I think it's a good conversation to have. If somebody can have a rational conversation about media, I think that there are things in the media that are certainly disturbing and whatnot. But let's not say that this whole thing is media created. I think that's a conspiracy theory. What are your thoughts?
Well, I would agree with you, Brian. And I heard that there's some rewriting of history that's trying to go on right now, and uh, the media did not create January 6th. And
Right.
yet there are some that are saying that it's the me. I mean, I was sitting here watching at my desk and the TV was on, and I'm saying, my God, they're storming the Capitol and the police can't hold the line. I mean, I'm sitting here screaming at the TV.
Right.
It was happening real time right here in my city, and the media did not create that. Now, what you do have with the 24-hour news cycle, you see it over and over and over again. But I don't know that that's necessarily a bad thing. The reason I watch CNN a lot is because if I'm out at meetings or whatever, I can come back and I can catch up real quick on what has happened while I was
Right.
gone. And there clearly are biases on the media. I mean, you'll have CNN or MSNBC that are perceived as being more liberal. You have Fox that goes all the way. In fact, I'm not even sure what Fox is even a credible news outlet anymore because they've gone so anti-everything.
Right.
So, but I used to watch them just because it's a different point of view. And you want to know what the different points of view is. The vitriol now that I see is just, I'm not sure I can take that anymore. But so I think, does the media contribute a little? Yeah, it does a little bit, but they're not rewriting history. They're reporting what's happening.
Right.
And as an informed citizen, I want to know what's going on. I want to know what's happening. I want to know whether it's safe for me to walk out of my door in a little while. Or are people going to come marching up Wisconsin Avenue where I live? So it's I think there is a place for the media, and I think that sometimes they step over the bounds. Yeah, but on balance, I think it's a good thing. I do think it's a good thing.
I agree, and my only, I'm a big proponent of the media, but I do think that, and growing up, I don't remember it being like it is now. I remember sort of reading articles, the
Mhm.
newspaper. My parents would get the newspaper,
Right.
and I remember reading it. Not when I was like 3, but when I was a little bit older, and I do remember. And again, maybe it wasn't like this, but this is how I remember it. Was that the news was reported on in more in a factual way versus
The
a
opinion,
certain. I'm sorry.
the opinions
Yeah,
that
I
you
mean, there
have.
were obviously there were editorials. That was for the
Right.
there were the opinion pages. Now I feel like every page is the opinion page,
Right.
or
Right.
every anchor is in injecting their opinion into the story.
Mhm.
So I guess my only thing for the media now is that I mean, yes, I agree with you. You and I are on the same page with that. I do think that sometimes people need to maybe look a little bit deeper when they hear a story,
Absolutely.
and that, I think, and that's not just media, but whether you're to the left or to the right,
Mhm.
whatever your leaders are saying, your leader is spinning their view. They're manipulating a little bit. Manipulating might be a strong word for it, but they are leveraging the facts to their narrative.
Absolutely. No
And
matter the party.
it doesn't matter what party you're in.
Sure.
That's completely right. That's
Sure.
like nonpartisan, right? That's
Right.
everyone.
Right. Right.
Bipartisan. But
Yeah.
but I do think that if there's something that when I'm watching the news right now and I hear something and someone makes whether it's somebody I support or don't support, I do try to maybe look that up and maybe try to find an article of a reputable organization that has covered it. Maybe try to find out the facts, because when you have a conversation with somebody these days and they are spewing out quote unquote facts,
Mhm.
the facts that they're hearing may not actually be facts.
Mhm. Mhm.
Just because they heard it on TV doesn't mean that it's true. So I guess that's my only thing. I know that there are people out there who will take a leader's word for it, or a reporter's word for it, and then that's their fact.
Well, and so many people won't do what you just said you do, or that I do, where you dig to find out more information,
Right. Right.
such that you are informed, purely informed, and that's unfortunate.
It is.
And that's why I think the media outlets, the main news, well, whether it's CBS, ABC, NBC, on the evening news, are usually not opinions at all. It's the facts. Where you get more of the opinion folks are on cable
Right.
news. They'll have a mix of news, but then you'll have the opinion, and you have all the panelists that are offering their perspective on various and sundry things. And I quite frankly like to see that. But it doesn't change my opinion. I try to go sort through what's good and what's bad, and where I can end up in the middle on some things. So but so many people don't do what you and I do, and that is dig deeper to find out what's really going on.
It is, and people, and I get it. People's attention spans are even less now.
That's
You
right.
basically you have less than 30 seconds to grab somebody's attention on things, right? We know that with the marketing work we do. I will say that we the media needs to get rid of the breaking news. I mean, not everything is breaking news. I understand that when everybody sees breaking news, they stop and they look and see what it is. But
I don't stop anymore to look, because it's usually something I've already heard, and it's not breaking.
it's not breaking.
Yeah.
The shooting in Indiana, that's breaking news.
Right. Right.
Joe Biden tripping up the stairs, tripping
It's
up the
not
stairs on his.
breaking.
That's
Not
not breaking
breaking news.
news.
Right.
And I feel like that's where the media loses credibility. That's where they water down. They water down some things, and
And
that drives me crazy.
Twitter, unfortunately, Twitter adds to that,
Yeah.
because what you'll have is like the president tripping going up the stairs. Um, on Twitter, they made a really big deal, and these were fringe folks that were making a big deal of that, to the point that then the mainstream media picked up on it as well. And so Twitter contributes. There's some good things about Twitter, but there really are some not so nice things. And people can say all sorts of things, untrue things, that and not get challenged. And they're doing it anonymously because nobody knows who they are. And that's just the way the space we live in right now.
The next time we have one of these, you and I, we have this conversations, we're going to talk about social media, because that's a whole other world.
Right.
The good, the bad, and the ugly. I do want to just bring up one other topic while it's timely, although unfortunately this topic will be timely every time we talk. But another shooting, this one in Indiana. By the time we drop the show, it'll be when it's not. Let's hope that by the time the show drops, that there's not another one, because this keeps happening, and I don't understand. And again, I don't want to get into a whole conversation. We don't have time about gun reform and gun laws and all that. But I do just want to address it with you and get your thoughts on it, because this happens again, right? They always talk about like a mass shooting is there's a certain amount. I forgot what the threshold is, the number of people who were killed. I don't know if that fluctuates.
Probably more than 2, I guess, but I don't
and this
know.
I think was what eight or nine people that were
this
were
was
killed.
8. There are several people injured, so that number may go up.
So clearly, again, we're not solving that today. Clearly, that's not. Clearly, I don't know about you, Barbara, but I've just kind of, and I don't know, this might sound terrible to say, but I almost just accept the fact that nothing's taking place. Nothing's going to happen. This is just going to keep happening. And let's just pray that it doesn't happen, to you, to me, to our loved ones, because, you're getting to the point now where there's no place that is now sacred from this, right? So it's not just workplaces. It's grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
It's this is old, a little older now. It's churches.
Mm-hmm.
If it happens at an elementary school, right, like what happened here in Connecticut at Sandy Hook, if it happens there, that's always kind of been my thought. If nothing happened after Sandy Hook
with the little first graders, 6-year-olds,
if nothing happened after that, then nothing's happening, because I don't know what else needs to happen. Right. So after that happened and nothing really, I mean, I know there's been some movement, but it still happens. But when that happened and there was really nothing massive that took place afterwards, that's helping to kind of curb this and alleviate this. I sort of feel hopeless. But what are your thoughts on these kind of things continuing to happen? Nothing seems to really be done. I'm tired of the, our heartfelt, we feel terrible. This happened.
Our thoughts and prayers. I'm sick and tired of our thoughts and prayers. Right. You're right. I think that, and I think we're the only country that has this kind of constant mass shootings all the time. And in the last 3-4 weeks, we've had how many? Is it 4, 5 now? Yeah. And I don't know whether the pandemic, curtailed some of this because people were shut in and weren't out. And now that people are out again, I'm not sure what's causing this. I haven't heard what happened in fact, the news conference is going on right now for law enforcement. So we'll find out what they know. But you can go to the mall or you can go to the grocery store, and some crazed person will come in and decide that they're just going to shoot up the place. Right. I do have, I'm not a gun enthusiast, so I'm not somebody that wants to have a gun in the house. But I do question, why does somebody needs an AR-15? I mean, it's one thing to be a gun owner and all of that, but to not make people go through background checks.
Right.
That seems that would be, it's not going to stop them all, but clearly you want to know that if people that are getting these guns are sane, and that they will be okay, they will handle the gun responsibly. And I don't know what's wrong with that. And I know it's such a controversial subject in Washington. And I agree with you. I don't see this changing. Though the NRA has such a hold on our politicians, though their star has dimmed tremendously, and they're in court right now.
Right.
But I don't see this changing anytime soon. And so we just have to hope and pray that when we go out and our families go out, that we can be safe and pay close attention to everything that's going on around you. And I do that as I go out now. I mean, you're always looking and just paying attention to the people that you see, because you just never know what's going to happen. And that's a sad state for us to live in. Other countries have other issues, but the mass shootings is not something that other countries have. Other, maybe in your countries that are like Russia or Brazil or some other place where it's not the kind of economy and not the kind of free country that we have. But this doesn't happen in other places. Yet here in America, the greatest country in the world, the most powerful country in the world, and we can't get control of that.
It's
Bad.
it is sad, and it's everyone's problem.
It is.
And just like just like the the racial pieces that we talked about earlier, this is all everyone's problem. You can walk out your door. I mean, again, let's be very clear. When you go to the supermarket today, you are a potential target. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your socioeconomic background is. You are a target now, because we've seen that this has happened. And it's really sad, and this might sound morbid, Barbara, but when I wake up in the morning, I usually get on my phone first thing. I just, like to see, if I've got any texts, and I usually just to check out the news. And I used to get on like, I used to read the sports section right away, see what the scores were from the night before. Now I get on to see if how many people, excuse me, getting choked up, excuse me, to make sure that nothing happened that last night. Like, was there another mass shooting? Of course you wake up and of course there it is.
I mean, that's, and the places you talk about, the grocery stores or the malls, these are what's considered soft targets. If law enforcement can't fortify them like they can the Capitol or government buildings, these are soft targets. And so if somebody wants to take out a whole bunch of people, they can just go to a grocery store or the drugstore or a shopping mall or a stadium, where sports are going on. So it's just, we all are, it's a tough situation. I think I know what the answer is. It's just that our politicians aren't going to step up. But it's there is no bipartisanship. There's no working together on either side, and we all lose. We are like the grass under the elephants out in the yard. We just continue to get stomped on all the time. So I feel like we're the grass. Yeah.
And we at the very beginning of the show, we talked about common sense. And to your point, I completely agree with you. I'm not a gun enthusiast at all, but I do understand that for some people it's a sport. For some, and people have, obviously they have literally a right to carry firearms in a legal what manner. But to your point, I don't understand why any civilian would need to own any kind of weapon that is used in war.
Right, exactly.
That I don't understand. Whether even if you just like the way it looks and you're never going to use it, what is the point?
Right.
Of a weapon, right? What is it? It's the AR-15? Is that the one, or AK-15? I don't even know. I'm very naive when it comes. But yeah, it's these weapons these weapons where they are used by our military to kill masses of people within seconds. For war, I understand. Life is precious anyway. But for war, I do understand that. But I don't understand why some individual in whatever state, even if they live in the woods away from people, if they're hunting animals,
yeah,
you don't need it.
No, exactly.
Common sense.
Yeah,
And then
but
it gets in the wrong hands.
well, that goes back to the common sense again.
There's
That's kind of how we started the podcast
Well, I
today.
guess that's how we'll kind of conclude it here. But
Absolutely.
all I'll say, Barbara, is so much for you and I talking for a half hour. But I will. But it's been a great conversation. I do want to turn it back to you. I know we have some great guests coming up, and you and I will do this periodically. This was a great way to start the day with you, as always. But I'll kick it back to you, and we'll take it from there.
Well, Brian, thank you. And as I said at the beginning, we only got to 2 or 3 of my subjects. We still have 5 or 6 that we didn't get to talk about.
Next time.
Yeah, next time when we will do this. But everybody, thanks so much for joining us today. We hope that you enjoyed the banter between Brian and I. Not that we solved any problems, but we hope that we have got the conversation going a little bit. Thank you for joining us. Our show, the next podcast will be on customer service, and we've got some exciting guests to for that show to talk about things that are going on and maybe how things may have changed over this past year because of the pandemic, and how businesses have had to adjust and think about delivering their service in a whole different way. So thanks for joining us. See you next time. Bye-bye.